So, bonjour, Jiramo Kwadishnikas, Big Waskinaga Dunchba, Kwadodem. I'm going to share screen here. So I've just put up some pictures here, as it helps me to think about what I want to talk about tonight. And so I've been asked to provide some teachings around the medicine wheel, and in particular, how it relates to mental health. Maintaining good mental health is a challenge given the current situations that we're all faced with. Everyone's trying to come to grips with the COVID-19 situation, and a lot of people are struggling to maintain good health. So I've titled this presentation or this teaching, really, it's about reclaiming the sweetness for life and how the medicine wheel teachings can help promote good health. So I want to just go back to this picture here. Every time I speak about anything. I always put this picture up. This is a picture that is taken in my home community, Whitefish River First Nation. And as you're traveling from Espanola to Birch Island, you'll see where the sign says Sudbury District and Manitowabi District sign, a little lake off to the left. And on this lake is this little island. And I took a picture of that because it reminds me of where I grew up. I grew up in Birch Island, and so we used to live above the hill where McGregor Bay is, and every day in the summertime we'd run down that hill, down the hill to the docks and go swimming down there. But in the middle of the lake was this little island, and that little island had this one little tree. And that little tree has since died because of the rising and the falling of the water, and it just couldn't nurture itself there. And so this little island reminds me of that. And I always put it up there because it's an important reminder for me to know where I come from, and to be reminded of those teachings that I get from that place. And on the, I guess would be on your right-hand side of the screen, those are pictures of my parents, Violet McGregor and Archie McGregor, and then they're both passed on now. But a lot of what I know comes from these two individuals, and we're Ojibwe. My father's Ojibwe, my mother's Odawa, and so those are the teachings that I carry from those two individuals, but also from other people as well. Somebody in our community that was well known who is also passed on is Lillian McGregor, Lillian Pitawanakwit-Ba, and also teachings from Herb Nabagon-Ba. So all of these people are passed on. And, just like that story that I shared a little earlier, is that, when we're passed on this information, it is for us to hang on to that information, but to pass it on when the time comes to do that and to share that. Because if we don't share it, then all of that information gets lost. And so I wanted to talk about this here, the sweetness for life. And when I think about sweetness for life, I think about that strawberry, that odemen that comes from the heart berry. And I just wanted to share a little story about an elder that I met at a health conference several years ago. Her name was Betty Miracle. I don't know if she's still around. I would hope that she is. But she was the elder that was at that conference. And I don't know what it is, but when I went into that room, I was drawn to her, and I sat with her throughout the entire conference. And she shared with me this teaching about the sweetness for life. And she said that that sweetness for life, that if we followed those foundational teachings. Those foundational teachings can help us address all kinds of health and social issues. Um, and going back to those foundational teachings is about reclaiming that sweetness for life. And she used the example of diabetes, people living with diabetes, as, and she said that one of the most important things for people with diabetes is to look after your feet. And you know, diabetics, they have to make sure that they eat properly and exercise and watch their blood sugars so that their blood sugars are controlled. And if they're not controlled well, they can end up with complications, things like heart disease and kidney and liver troubles. And if they're not careful about their feet, they can lose feeling in their feet, and they can damage their feet, which could result in them losing their toes or even the whole foot, or sometimes in worst cases their legs. And she said, so imagine having our feet firmly planted on the ground and taking care of them. With diabetic people, they don't have that opportunity to plant their feet firmly on the ground any longer. And when we lose that connection to Mother Earth, that really affects how we live our life. Um, so changing the way we view life can go a long way to ensuring that we never lose that connection with the earth. And then she said that these foundational teachings can help deal with other issues such as family violence and substance abuse and addictions issues, and even some personal issues, personal health issues. Because these foundational teachings, they provide us with guidance for how to live life, how to get along with other people, how to be kind, how to be caring, how to just look after ourselves. So one of the foundational teachings that we have is this medicine wheel teachings, and they also provide guidance for how we live life. This here comes from Four Directions Teaching, and this is one that Lillian McGregor Pitawanakwit developed, or that drew when she was working with that group. And there isn't one correct version of the medicine wheel. Indigenous people across Turtle Island all have their teachings about the medicine wheel, and these teachings vary from tribe to tribe. But what is important to remember is that the foundational teachings are all similar between different tribal groups. The colors and the teachings in each of the directions will be different from one tribe to another. And so this one here is the Ojibwe teaching on the medicine wheel. So when you see a medicine wheel, the medicine wheel is often depicted as a circle that is divided into four quadrants. So that circle that you see in the middle, the yellow, the red, the black, and the white, often people just think that that's the medicine wheel and that there are four quadrants and that there are four cardinal directions. The east, Wabanang, often for Ojibwe people, represented by the color yellow, and south, Jawanang, represented by the color red. West, Epingishmak, is colored black, and in the north, Giwednang, the color there is white. The other directions that often are overlooked are the center, which for Ojibwe people, it would be the color purple. And then for Mother Earth, the color green. And then the seventh direction is the Father Sky, which is color blue. And there are many teachings of the medicine wheel. There are 7 teachings in each direction and sub teachings to each of these teachings. And you can spend a lot of time going over all of these teachings. It could be like every day you could go in, you can look at these and you can learn something about it. But what is important to remember is that each of these teachings reminds us of the need for balance in the world, and that we must strive for balance each and every day. For Indigenous peoples, they view health and wellness from that holistic perspective. And so today, I'm not going to go into all of the directions there, but I'm going to look at it in terms of four things. Looking at um, balance of body, mind, heart, and spirit. And even though you look at this medicine wheel and you see that it's clearly divided into four quadrants, when we think about the body, mind, heart, and spirit, that is something that isn't so easily pulled apart and put neatly into these little compartments, because they all interrelate with one another. And as I said earlier, these teachings remind us of the need to be in balance in the world. And for some, being in balance means balancing the mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual aspects of our being. But balance also means that feeling good about ourselves and being healthy. So that's about being in balance as well. So when we look at the body, um, we need certain things in our body in order to be healthy. Um, our physical needs, we need air, water, food, clothing, shelter, exercise, and sex. And when all of these things are met, we feel good about ourselves. So it's really important that we take care of our physical health needs, that we get the exercise that we need. Um, and we think about food as medicine. When we think about food as medicine, it takes on a different meaning for us. And I often go back to thinking about when I was growing up as a young child. You know, in the summertime, the first berry that came out was the strawberry. And I remember being given a cup and being told to go out and pick those berries. And so there was nine of us, nine children. So, you know, we each got a cup and we came back in with that cup. And we gave it to our mom. And sometimes she'd make jam with it, but some days, you know, we'd be given a treat. She'd make us strawberry dumplings, which is really, really yummy. Anyway, and so it takes a long time to pick that. Those wild strawberries are really tiny, so it takes a long time to pick those wild strawberries. And so you appreciate the food all that much more. And I'm reminded of a story. My daughter, she was about my age then, about 7, maybe 8, maybe 9. I can't remember exactly, but anyway, we gave her a cup and sent her out to go pick up those berries, and she came back in with maybe a cup full of berries, and she comes running in. She's really happy, just bounding in into the house, and she goes up to her grandpa and she says, "Look, Grandpa, I got all these berries." And so he took those berries and he just swallowed them all down. And she's standing there and she's almost in tears because it took her a long time to pick those. And my dad just took those berries and ate them all in front of her. But anyway, when we view food as medicine, we come to appreciate it all that much more. And you know, our food is our medicine. We think about wild rice. And what I learned about wild rice is that it takes a long time to grow that wild rice. And for a long time in this area, there hadn't been any wild rice. And so in Wikwemkong, they decided to start to grow wild rice again. And they went to Wisconsin, Minnesota to learn from those people about how to do wild rice and came back with some seeds. And the ground has to be just right. The soil has to be just right. There has to be flowing water. And the depth of the water has to be just right. And so they sowed these seeds, and the first year didn't come up, but the second year it did, and they started to grow. But then, you know, part of it is that in that environment you have other things like fish and you have moose and stuff like that. And so what could happen is that the fish would eat those seeds or the moose would come in and eat the plants. And so you'd be lucky to get some of that wild rice. Well, the wild rice grew, but then you had to be able to prepare that, and it takes a long time. I understand that there's a 7-stage process for growing this wild rice. And so then you might end up with a canoe full of wild rice, but by the time you finish that process, the processing of the wild rice, you might have maybe a pail full. But the really nice thing about wild rice is when you cook it, you might take a half a cup of wild rice and it comes 4 times that much. You might end up with about 2 cups of wild rice. And you don't need a lot. You don't need a lot in order to be healthy. You just need maybe about a half a cup of that. So that quarter cup might feed about 8 people. But when you understand where that food comes from, we begin to understand the medicine that's in that food and how it nourishes our body. So that's a little bit about the body, is that we really need to start to think differently about it. You know, our bodies, these are the only bodies that we have. We need to take care of it. We need to get out there and exercise. We need to get good sleep. We need to nourish that body. And so that's a really important part of understanding this. The next piece that I'd like to talk about is balance of the mind. Um, when our physical health needs are met, we can seek meaning in life. Um, Understanding the what's, the hows, and the whys of life contribute to intellectual and spiritual growth. And balance of mind is about being able to learn. And people learn in many different ways. They learn, child learns through play. Sometimes we learn through trial and error. And sometimes we learn by listening to teachings. And one way that I learned as a child is through storytelling, you know. And my father, he was a storyteller. He authored a book called Wigwaskinaga, Stories of Dreamers Rock, Bell Rocks, and the Little People. And my father was a keeper of traditional knowledge, and he shared those knowledge in those stories. And so my childhood was filled with his stories. He would tell us stories, mainly life stories, life lessons, cautionary tales, maybe stories about family history. And another way that people learn is through experience, you know. And you know, we'd be told something, and we'd only be told once, "Don't run, don't run." And so we'd either listen or we didn't listen. And if we ran and we fell down, we'd get hurt. Or they'd say, "Don't touch the stove." And we had wood stoves, and if we touched the stove, we got burnt. But you know, definitely we learned that not to touch that wood stove. So we learned through experience, and then we learned through traditional activities about. And I was sharing with people about. I did a workshop with my family this summer about how to make ash baskets. It was something that's a lost art, and very few people really know how to do this. But you know, you need to know what kind of wood to get. And you go out into the bush and you look for black ash. So many trees out there and so many different kinds of trees that you really need to know where this black ash grows. And then you need to pick the right tree. That tree has to be straight, has to be like the trunk has to be straight. If you have branches in that trunk, then the pounding the ash becomes really hard. So once we get the ash, we have to pound it. We have to pound it, and you know, you there's a way that you can pound that ash, and you have to cut a piece at the edge of the ash in order to start the lifting of that ash. And so it takes a little bit of effort to pound that ash, and then you have to split that ash. Once it's pounded, split it and then scrape it, and then you make the weavers, and then you also make the I forget what they're called now, but the base, the bases. And then you'll have to learn how to weave them together. And you need to learn how to dye the ash so that you get different colors and different sizes. And so, and then how to create different designs in it. So it's a really long process, but in all of that process, there was a lot of things happening at the same time. You know, we were visiting, we were talking, we were sharing stories, and all kinds of learning was happening at the same time. Same thing happens when you pick sweetgrass, or if you go picking berries, or if you make maple syrup, or if you're hunting or fishing. And one of the girls just said they didn't make their own net. Probably take a little while, but possible. So learning traditional skills and practicing skills help people to make sense of the world. And balance of mind means that we're able to learn from both our successes and failures. And I think some of the most important lessons that I had in my life are mainly about what not to do, how not to treat people, because I didn't like how I was treated. And I thought to myself that if I ever got into a position of authority or leadership, that a lot of my lessons would be, you know, what not to do with people, as opposed, oh, there's some good lessons about how to treat people really well as well. And I think balance of mind means that we willingly accept the challenge that life offers, that every day is a challenge. But, you know, and I remember working in mental health, and I was fairly young at the time, and I became the clinic manager. And I remember thinking about this, that it almost seemed that every day there was a problem that came up in work, something that needed to be resolved. And I'd sit there and I'd think about, you know, what do I do about this? This is a new problem that I haven't encountered before. I don't know what to do with this. But after thinking and reflecting on my past experiences, I would come up with a solution to that problem. And I remember thinking one day that it's like those, we used to have a treat called nuts and bolts, and it had little cheese sticks in there and little shreddies and little Cheerios, and you put your hand in, you pull that out, and you look at it, what's in your hand, and it, every time you put your hand in there, it was a different combination. And you know, I think back to that problem solving, and I think back to all of the things that happened in my life, and each of those things that we that came up with, there was a different combination that seemed to work with all of this. And I remember thinking that I wonder if at some point in time I'll put my hand in there and not be able to solve a problem. That hasn't happened yet. So we feel a sense of pride in our accomplishments and know that others believe in us. And so that helps us to have that good mind, that balance of mind. And we take our responsibilities and our actions and know that through our actions we can shape our future. That is balance of mind. So the next piece I want to talk about is the balance of our heart. And our heart, balance of our heart occurs when our physical and emotional needs are met. And balance of heart includes being loved, having a sense of belonging, feeling included and accepted by family, friends, and community. And knowing that we have someone who will listen to it and understand us. Balance of heart happens when we engage in reflection by being mindful of and listening to one's heart, body, brain, and soul. Our hearts become balanced when we understand and accept our limitations. I think that's probably being humble. And you know, one of the things that I realized in life is that the more you know, the less you realize you know, that there's always something more out there that you need to know, and that you can't possibly know everything that there is. And so being humble about that and accepting our limitations helps in that balance of our heart. It helps us when we have others like family and friends who are willing to help, you know, and I can't stress that enough, having family and friends. I know that in this current day, it's really hard to connect with family and friends. But there are ways. We are creative and resilient people, and there's ways that we can do this. So in order to create a balanced heart, we have to have healthy boundaries and be respectful of other people's boundaries. And sometimes we take on more than what we need to take on, and we shouldn't do that. We should just kind of remember that, we're all human beings and that we can only take on so much, that to take on more would put us at risk. It puts our health at risk. And as much as we love people, sometimes we have to say no, that we can't do things. Balance also comes from being able to control our own emotions. And sometimes, and I often grew up with this. And, my mother, my grandmother saying to me, we're ladies on their time. They always use the excuse, I'm on my time. I can't, I'm angry and upset because I'm on my time. And I remember being told that, that's a natural part of life. You're going to have those feelings. You're going to feel a little pain, a little cramping. You're going to feel irritable, but that's no excuse to treat people badly. And so we learn that is we learn to control those kinds of things. That yeah, it's okay to feel that, but you know what? We really need to put those in check sometimes. And finally, being in harmony with our family and community means we know who we are and where we belong. Everybody is searching for that sense of belonging. You know, when my mom passed, my people looked to me to be that mother. And I remember my younger sister sitting there and sitting beside me, and she put her head down on my shoulder, and she wanted me to take on that mother role. And I said, I can't do that. I'm your sister. And so we eventually found our role. But finding out where we belong, that's important. Where we belong in the big scheme of things, is it my job? We all have so much that we do in life. I can't count the number of roles that I have. Sometimes it's a friend, sometimes it's an auntie, sometimes it's a mother, sometimes it's a grandmother, um, sometimes it's the taxi driver. But we all have our roles, and we all have our boundaries. But we need to respect those rules and boundaries that we have. Otherwise, it drives us crazy. And then the last thing that I want to talk about in terms of the body, mind, heart is the spirit. And spirit is one of the teachings that I had about spirit is that we all come from the spirit world, and that, our spirit chooses our parents, um, who our parents are, and what we're going to do in this world, and what we're going to accomplish, and when we're going to return back to the spirit world. And another teaching that I had around that spirit is that baby that comes into your life comes from that spirit world, and our responsibility is to raise the spirit of that child. That word benojis, it doesn't mean child or baby. It means it talks about our responsibility to raise the spirit of that child. And I think about that, and I think about my children and my grandchildren. You think, okay, that's going to end when your children grow up and they move away. But that to me is a never ending kind of thing. I still are nurturing those spirits, the spirit of my children and the spirit of my grandchildren. It's a lifelong, long journey. But we come in from that in that eastern direction from the spirit world. But at the end of our life, we go out to what we call the western doorway back to that spirit world. And I remember my daughter when she was about 6 years old, and we're traveling from Wickwamcong to Little Current and up around 10 Mile Point. And this is before seatbelts. Um, she's standing over behind me. We had a van, so she gets up and she gets out of her seat and comes and taps me on the shoulder, and she says, "Mom." I go, "What?" She says, "I'm a little elder." I go, oh. She goes, yeah. She says, I have a Anishinaabe Noswin. I go, oh. I said, what's your name? And she goes, Nimki Beneshikwe. And I said, oh, where did you get that? And she says, well, I got it at school. We had naming ceremony at school. And I go, oh. And she says, you know what? I go, what? She says, my job in this world is to share those teachings. That's my job. And to me, that was a real profound moment in my life because, she was still not that far out from the spirit world. But, her saying those kinds of things to me really, really caused me to stop and think about that. What does that mean? And so our young people, our babies coming from the spirit world, they carry those teachings, you know. Um, and so it's really important that we pay attention to that. So when we come from that spirit world, we're raised in safe, caring, and respectful environment, and we learn to value others and ourselves. And what I've also been told is that when we come in from that spirit world, we have everything we need in this world in order to survive. And we know we have our parents. They have that caring, nurturing environment. We have our name and our spirit and our clan, our spirit helpers. Those are all things that come with us. And some people, they don't know what their spirit name is, and sometimes they will go to an elder and they'll ask for their spirit name, and that spirit name is their name, and the elder will know what that name is when they put that tobacco down. So we learn to value others and ourselves and our environment, including the plants and animals and all those other beings. That's part of being in in balance spiritually. And we gain meaning and understanding about the relationships with our families and friends and community and natural environment. And oftentimes, when we're at peace, it's when we have those moments when we're sitting by the fire and we're just looking at that fire and watching the flames in there, or when we're sitting down by the shoreline and we're listening to the waves come in. Those are times, or when we're just walking through the bushes, those are times when we're really in touch with that and at peace with ourselves. The other time that we're at peace with ourselves is when we sing our songs or we attend cultural activities like powwows and gatherings and teachings, and when we participate in ceremony. All of those things are things that help us to build our inner fire or our spirit, and this helps us to become whole. And I remember, I spend a lot of time trying to build my own spirit, but I remember a time where I almost lost my spirit. And there was something that was done to me. And I remember lying on my bed and the window was open. And I was remembering just lying there. And I could just feel my spirit, and it was going out that window. So I called up my sister and she says, well, come with me. And I said, where? She says, we're going to Thunder Bay. And I said, okay. So I got in the vehicle with her and I got my kids in there with her, and away we went off to Thunder Bay, and we stopped at Pancake Bay. People know, I don't know if people know where Pancake Bay is, just past to St. Marie. And I was out there and I was lying on the in the water, just lying on my back in the water and letting the waves carry me. But that was part of me regaining my spirit. Just being surrounded by that water helped me to build my spirit. And then we got to Thunder Bay, and we went up to Thunder Mountain and we did our offering up there, and we did other things there. But those are the kinds of things that help to rebuild that spirit, build our inner fire. These kinds of activities, they contribute to our sense of togetherness and purpose, and we create meaning and belonging by being with others. And when we are with others, we build our hope. Spiritual growth is connected to the land, to each other, and to our community. Balance means being at peace with oneself and with all of creation. Balance means knowing that we matter and that we're accepted. And to feel at peace is to be one with the Creator. And so those are the kinds of things that when I think about being in balance, it's balancing our health, balancing our heart, balancing our mind, and balancing our spirit. And so when we go through life, stuff happens to us. You know, we could, people say things to us and do things to us. And sometimes it's really hurtful, those things that people do to us. And it's like we lose a part of our soul to the universe every time something like that happens. You know, those little t traumas, you know, we lose a piece of ourself to the universe. And so what tends to happen to people is that they're born whole, but all of these little pieces are lost out to the universe. And we need to do things to reclaim those lost soul pieces. Some of it is just taking care of ourselves, or some of it is going to ceremony. And one of the ceremonies that I've been at is a cedar bath ceremony. And cedar is one of those medicines that help to heal people. One of our four medicines that are really important for us to pay attention to. It's a female medicine, you know, and I just wanted to yeah, it's a female medicine. So sometimes when we do that cedar bath, you know, that helps to clean us, you know, and to make us whole. So cedar bath ceremony is done when people come into this world. It's done when we're not feeling good about ourselves. It's done when people leave this earth. And so sometimes, you know, when people are feeling that hurt and that trauma or that pain, sometimes they go to see somebody to have a cedar bath done. And what happens there is different for every individual. But the gist of it is that when you give tobacco to the healer, um, that healer knows through that tobacco what it is that you're asking for. You know, you can't lie to that tobacco. That tobacco is a sacred medicine. It knows, and it's the vehicle by which that healer knows their connection to the spirit world, and they know what you're looking for in that. And that a lot of the times when people are coming in for that cedar bath, it's looking for something, you know, to fill those voids. And so what they do in that cedar bath is they address whatever the issue is, but they take out those things, but they have to put things back in. So what they put back in there are those good feelings, good thoughts, good energies, positive affirmations, all kinds of goodness goes back into the individual during that process. And I think that's a good practice when we look at what happens with individuals and what we go through on a daily basis is that, you know, we're full of all of this negative stuff that we have to find a way of releasing that and putting back into us those things that are really positive in our life. You know, and Cedar Bath is one way to do that. But like I said, you know, we lose parts of our soul pieces to the universe. And when I think about that, you know, I think about this guy Eduardo Duran, and he talked about um, healing the soul wound. And he says sometimes when people are whole, holy, full of holes, they look for things to fill those holes. Jane Middleton Moss talks about that too. She talks about trauma and she talks about addictions. But she also says that people are looking for things to fill those voids in their being. Sometimes it's sex, sometimes it's alcohol, sometimes it's drugs, sometimes it's relationships. People go in and out of relationships. Children, you know, if they don't feel the love, they might say, okay, I'm going to have a child myself. That child is going to love me, you know, and they do all these kinds of things looking for ways to fill those holes, but it doesn't work. So this Eduardo Duran guy, he said that whenever people ingest alcohol, they they enter into a negotiation with the spirit of alcohol. He calls alcohol a spirit. And when you enter into negotiations, it's a give and take. And so sometimes when people drink, they're looking for something. They're looking to numb their pain. They're looking to maybe feel confident or have the courage. I see this person over there, and I want to enter into a relationship with them, but I'm too scared. Give a couple of drinks, I'll go over there and talk to that individual, and maybe they'll have a good relationship. But after a while, you get back and forth into this negotiation with the spirit of alcohol, and then that spirit takes more and more, and at some point in time, you begin to lose things. You might lose your self-respect. You might lose your family and your friends. You might lose your job. You might lose your car in an accident, drunk driving, you know, or even worse, you might be responsible for a death, you know. And so there's a price to pay when you enter into that negotiation. And he says that, we got to think about those things, about those things that we do. But, and I don't want to draw attention to all that negative stuff. I think what I really want to say to people is that, we come from that history of drama. And it's no wonder we feel sad sometimes, and we can feel depressed about certain things. And but I think sadness in itself isn't really a bad thing. Sadness can point to things that we need to do in our lives to make changes, to make our lives better. Sadness comes from losses and frustrations in daily life, and sadness can go away if we have the proper support and encouragement. If we take care of ourselves, we eat and sleep enough. If we do things to lower our stress levels, and if we do things to become physically active. But I think depression is a little bit more different. Depression, it can last a long time, and it can become serious, and it can become hard to manage your life. It can go from being really mild to the point where people want to end their lives. Sometimes they call that a major depression, and sometimes people end up suiciding. But this unbearable illness or this depression can affect how people think, feel, and behave. And this depression can last for years. It can be painful, and it, a lot of people think, well, I'll talk myself out of depression, but you can't talk yourself out of depression. It's that long lasting kind of thing, and sometimes you need help to be able to pull yourself out of that. You might need medication, or you might need support and encouragement. You might need to start to make changes in your life that help you deal with some of the stresses that you're going through. So, all of these things are important to understand. Um, I think what we have as Anishinaabe people is we have a lot of really good teachings about how to live life. You know, if we focus on those teachings, how do we have a good mind? How do we have a good spirit? How do we have a good heart? And how do we have a good body? Those things help us along our journey. And just like a river, our journey is sometimes very peaceful, but sometimes our journey is very rough. And if you're going down that rough part of the river, eventually that river smooths out again. So those times aren't going to last. You just got to feel confident that things will change at some point in time. And those things that help us change are our family and our community It's the activities that we do. It's attending ceremony. It's picking up those foundational teachings. It's about going back and learning about um, how to get along with our families and friends, and being able to ask for help and support when we need those kinds of things. But reaching out is really hard for a lot of people, you know, and a lot of people think, well, I should be able to do this on my own. But you know, sometimes even helpers need to accept help. You know, we're not you know, people often say Anishinaabe are really strong, but we're not always that strong. You know, we're human beings, and because we're human beings, we sometimes feel that stress and we feel that pain. And this is a signal to us that we really need to start to take care of ourselves. And we need to step back and think about, why am I feeling like this right now? What do I need to do in order to take care of myself? Who do I need to enlist to help me do those kinds of things? So and that's a really important message that I want to share with people, is that you need to develop your circle of care, um, and to find those people who are going to treat you with dignity and kindness, and maybe at the same time be one of those people that's going to help others, you know, because you never know when you need to to have somebody to stand by you and help you out. It's a give and take. It's about that reciprocity of being with people. So being part of your own recovery is an important step, you know, asking yourself, am I making healthy choices for myself? Do I get enough sleep? Do I eat well? Do I eat when I'm hungry? Am I physically active? Um, how do I calm myself down? Do I have a sacred place that you can go? Growing up as a child, I had this place that I loved. It was a white rock halfway up a hill behind where my grandmother lived. And I thought, only I knew that place. I was the only one that knew that place, but it wasn't. There was a lot of people went there, but that was my safe place. And I could sit there and I could listen to the wind in the trees and know that it was a safe place. So, you know, things like spending time in nature or reaching out for help from a self-help group. Learning about yourself is really important, you know. Do you know your history? Do you know anything about your culture, your ways of knowing, your values and beliefs? Do you participate in meaningful activities? Um, do you have those close connections? Do you have a friend or a family member? Are you involved in your community? Um, do you have some good role models? Who do you reach out to when you need help? You know, um, those are the things that are really important. Is life is having those family and kinship ties. You know, because Anishinaabe people, they're all about family. You know, and I was telling this to somebody else, is that our family, you know, at one point in time, every weekend we had a family gathering, you know, and then I went off to school and I had to go down to Toronto, and I took my girls with me, and I remember them telling me that we really miss our family because it was every weekend we were there. It was a birth, a celebration of some sort, Christmas, New Year's, Easter, anniversaries, weddings, whatever it happened to be. It was almost like every weekend there was something we celebrated. It was a celebration of life. And when we left, they really missed that. And, you know, they needed to reconnect. And I remember being offered a job down in Toronto with the Ministry of Community, Child and Family Services, and I turned it down. And he goes, why? He says, you'd be really good at it. And I said, well, I have to go back home to my family and community. That's where I got my strength from, is there. And so I just wanted to end with something that a teaching that was passed on to me, and it was by this guy. He was a Cree elder, and where is it? Right here, his name was A.J. Felix, and he had gone to the lodge that Dave Cushane had, and it was just April this year, and he was talking about how COVID has really caused us to go back into our shells and to lose connection with a lot of people. And his message was really about waking up. And he said he had a song that he played, and he got this song from his godfather. Godfather gave it to him, and he said to pass this song along. But I haven't learned that song, but I'll explain the song. And it's about wake up. It goes, wake up, my grandson. Wake up, my granddaughter. Your children are hurting. Wake up. Your children don't even know how to pray. Wake up. Your children are not learning good things. Wake up. Your people aren't getting along. They don't even know how to visit each other. Wake up. The old people are not visiting. You're not looking after each other. Not sitting. They're not acknowledging each other. Wake up. Wake up, my grandson. We're not sharing anything with each other. Wake up, my granddaughter. We're stingy. Wake up. How can we be blessed when we're not sharing? How can we be healthy? We are not even kin. We're not even being relative to each other. We're not even visiting our brothers and sisters. Wake up. We are not even telling our mom, I love you. We're not even telling your dad, I love you. Wake up. You are not teaching. You are not practicing your spirituality that Creator had given you. The humility you are supposed to have. You're not practicing. Wake up. And so his is really about going back to those ceremonies and picking up those teachings that we have and practicing those things. And he says, even in this time of COVID, we have our families. We're in our own little bubbles. We have those families that are with us. And instead of looking at all the things that you can't do with your family, think about how this has brought families closer together and how we're caring for one another. And that we need to continue to do more of that. You know, caring for one another, caring for our families, being thankful, being blessed that we woke up again another day and that we have a chance to make it better today, better than it was tomorrow. And so this picture here that is here, I like to find pictures from my home community. I believe it's, I see if I can recognize that. I believe her name is Crystal. And this is out by Rainbow Lodge in Birch Island. That picture was taken out there. And yeah, I always think, you know, we're blessed that we have this beautiful country, that we can see the sunshine another day, and that we have our family and friends, and we have nature. And I think we even need to be thankful that COVID is here and that there's so many lessons that we can learn from it and that we can take care of ourselves. And that's all I'd like to leave you with today.